Hello everybody, it's Colin Ellis here. Now I'm over in Europe for the next month to do some work and start work on my next book, and while I was here I thought that I would share some stories about culture that make their way into the media. It's one of the speeches that I do a lot to senior leadership teams because there is this concern now about how do we keep our culture out of the media, because it has such a detrimental impact on the reputation not only of the organisation but the people that lead it. And so I thought I would just share some of the stories and talk a little bit about how kind of the steps that you can take to make sure those things don't make their way into the media. Now, if you'll work for a media organisation, I'll just say this. It'd be nice to see some good news stories about workplace culture in the paper. And I know you'll probably say, they don't really sell newspapers. Didn't be an MC. Right, perfect moment. But, let's try it. Let's try a bit more good news in the media. That would be useful. Anyway, that's not what this is about. I love a newspaper as well, as a former newspaper man, and by that I mean I worked in advertising for a while. It's something about the ink on the fingers. Anyway, that's not what this is about. So let's just. I'm just going to pick a couple of stories while I'm over here. I'm just going to talk to them. And now, of course, the big story in the UK at the minute is the appointment of another Prime Minister. See Rishi Sunak, that's Prince Charles, Rishi Sunak there. He was appointed Prime Minister here yesterday. I took a walk out, and there was a media hullabaloo down at Westminster as all the announcements were made. Now the first thing that I would say is that it's great to see a person of colour in the office of Prime Minister. Britain is a fabulously diverse country, yet Rishi Sunak is the first person of colour, he's British-born Indian, to hold the role. So that's great, and often organisations talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, and they send everybody on a programme, and isn't that great? And yet, does the workforce really represent the people that we serve? Often it doesn't. So you can't pay lip service to it. So it's great to see. Now, he's already made some appointments. Now, I'm not going to talk about the politics. I'm going to try not to talk about the politics. I'm going to try. Because nobody wants to see that or hear other people's views on that. But it's fair to say the Conservative Party have had a pretty horrid time. They're the ruling party here in the UK. Whether they should still be the ruling party or not is another issue. General election, excuse me. But they've had a pretty torrid time, and the culture of the Conservative Party has been a kind of front and centre throughout this whole time, through Boris Johnson, through Liz Truss, and now through Rishi Sunak. And basically what we've had is almost, it feels like 12 weeks of backstabbing and all of these other nasty things that you get in workplace cultures from time to time. So we talked a lot yesterday. Rishi Sunak, I saw his first speech. Yeah, politicians, you really do need to become better orators. You're so uninspiring. Do a programme on how to public speak. I mean, it's not that hard. Anyway, that goes for all leaders. Sorry, I'm just trying to refer it back to what I said I would talk about. All leaders should learn how to public speak. You should. I mean, your job, if you're a leader at all, your job is to motivate and inspire people. So the things that you come out of your mouth should touch us right here. We should be like, oh, that was good. But Rishi Sunak's got a job on his hand. He talked about restoring integrity in the Conservative Party. So what he's talking about is people trusting the culture of the Conservative Party again. And yet one of his one of his first decisions was to bring back someone who broke the rules last week. Suella Braverman, she resigned. She was working for Liz Truss. She resigned. She got the ball rolling really here with the change in Prime Minister. But she sent something from a personal email, admitted it, resigned, saying she shouldn't have done it, and that was that. Except he brought it back. Now, often we see this in business where there are different rules for certain people, kind of particularly higher up the hierarchy you go than there are for people lower down the hierarchy, which is absolutely appalling. And that says you're special, but you're not. So if you broke the rules, you broke the rules. You don't get a free pass. Now, I'm not saying people don't make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't get brought back into the role less than a week later. Especially if you want to restore integrity. The other thing I noticed from the news yesterday and from reading the paper this morning is I feel like it's bringing a lot of the older guard back who previously served under particularly Boris Johnson, who didn't cover themselves in glory Now, kind of I liken this to when they do a bit of an org reshuffle or an operating model change. It's a bit like shuffling the deck chairs of the Titanic. And what you find is people who were incompetent before get more accountability and responsibility in order to justify a different role. It's called the Peter Principle, where you're promoted to your level of incompetence. You should go and read about it. But yeah, I feel like, well, hang on a minute. If this is a fresh start and if this has changed, you've got to do some stuff differently. You can't just invite all of those old people back. Again, relating it back to workplace culture, if you're going through a period of change, it's got to feel different. You've got to do some things differently. What you can't afford to do is say one thing and then do something completely different. The other story I wanted to draw your attention to is a sports story. Don't switch off. It's not going to be about football. Well, it's a little bit about football. And so this is Unai Emery. Unai Emery has just been appointed the manager of Aston Villa Football Club. It's a challenge I could not turn down. And you hear a lot of that from managers in all walks of life. Now the pressure's on when it comes to new managers. Is they really have to perform almost immediately. What we need is greater understanding from people about the job that they have, but also managers need to know that their job is to build a great culture. Now it doesn't matter whether it's based in an office, whether you're managing a team of gardeners or whether you're running a football club. These are core management skills, knowing how to build and create a vibrant culture. Now ultimately, of course, it's a results business like anything. There's certain things, certain targets you've got to hit, but you've got to feel that you're part of something different, part of something new. Now, for a sports team manager, what they've got to be really good on formations. They've got to be really good on training activities. They've got to use the data. What you want is a real kind of modern leader. Again, referring it to business as well. They've got to understand the different methods, the structures, the processes. What's new? What's out there? How can we use data in a different way? But ultimately, it's about creating connections. It's about creating connections between people. It's about creating an environment where people can bring their best selves to work, where people feel that they've got a chance to grow, to get better at what they do, where expectations are set really, really clearly, and ultimately, collectively, you've got a chance for success. My own football club called Everton. I can't wait to go and see them while I'm back home. They appointed a younger manager, Frank Lampard, last year, and from the outside in, and my lens is slightly different than the average supporter, although I can't help myself sometimes. I'm looking at some of the things that he's doing from a culture perspective, and how he's getting the best out of younger players, how he talks to the media, kind of what that discipline looks like. And there's some real positive signs that's rubbing off on the supporters. Now all of a sudden the supporters have got more patience, and I think from a business perspective, if you can see that a manager is trying to do something different, if you can see that they're creating a space where you feel a sense of optimism about the future, then you give them a little bit more time, you give them a little bit more of yourself, and you're prepared to be part of whatever it is moving forward. Anyway, that feels like enough for now before I get far too serious and start talking about the football. Hope you've enjoyed this culture briefing. I look forward to doing another one soon.